Okay, good morning, Sunnyvale friends. Welcome to our chilly October. I'm Sunnyvale Mayor Larry Klein. Thanks for joining me again this week for my weekly virtual office hour address. This is the 83rd installment, and I hope everyone's doing well, staying healthy. We've now reached 578 days since March 16th, 2020 county health order started the shelter in place in an attempt to slow the spread of COVID-19. We're now 19 months into that shutdown. 19 months ago, I converted my weekly coffee shop hours into a weekly live stream address. Haven't missed a week since. And people still say they enjoy hearing from their mayor and whether or not they watch it live or whether or not it's delayed. But these weekly sessions are good because they allow me to kind of look back on the past week, but they also allow me to provide you some updates and some news, answer some of your general questions about Sunnyvale or what's going on in the world, and just pass on some words of encouragement here and there. I'm also, of course, following this televised session with in-person meetings at the local coffee shop. It varies from week to week how long I can be there, but I try to show up and if you want to reserve a portion of that time, 15 minutes or 30 minutes, just email me at larry@larryklein.com, and we can set up a time that's mutually beneficial. So thanks for allowing me to continue to represent you and work for Sunnyvale. A few months ago, of course, I started changing my background art every week, and this art is provided by artists from the Sunnyvale Art Club. And so this week's piece is called Miller's Lake, and it's by Chris MacDonough. So if you are interested in purchasing that piece, just reach out to me and I'll put you in contact with the artist. So it's always been it's been great having my art in the background change on a weekly basis, and so it adds a little more interest to this podcast, this live stream, as well as uh, what we're doing. What from my standpoint on a weekly basis, I get to look at new art in my background. So it's actually good from that standpoint. Let's go ahead and get started and talk about what's happened at the federal, state, county, and city level over the last few weeks. 2 weekends ago was the Arden Wine Festival. And so I visited both days. It was actually great to be out, seeing people. And it was a little smaller than usual, but it was not as well advertised because they wanted to keep it a little bit calmer during COVID. So they only had one live musical band each day at 3 p.m. And it was mainly local people, people from Sunnyvale, maybe the surrounding cities, as opposed to what normally would happen is a very large advertising campaign of come to Sunnyvale for the Sunnyvale Art and Wine. But there's local artists. There were artists from all over California. There was wine and beer and some music, and I think people were just happy to be out and enjoying the pretty hot weekend. And then as far as the Art and Wine, it will be back in June. That's the current plan. So it'll be back kind of on its normal schedule, hopefully after we're pretty much done with COVID. Last week, of course, was Fleet Week in San Francisco, so we saw quite a few large planes landing here at Moffett Field. Definitely, that's kind of continued throughout the week as they're slowly redeploying to different portions of the country. But definitely, it was good to see some very interesting planes in our skies, and so that's always a lot of fun. Last Tuesday, the Santa Clara County Board of Supervisors met and they moved forward plans to purchase the Crestview Hotel in Mountain View. And so this hotel is right along the border uh, between Sunnyvale and Mountain View, right next to the Safeway, and from along El Camino there. And ultimately, the plans aren't fixed as far as what can be done there. It's like is it going to be permanent housing? Is it going to be transitionary housing? That hasn't been decided yet. So I've been talking to multiple residents, been talking to council members in Mountain View and our county supervisors, of course. And the hotel is 66 rooms on about an acre and almost an acre and a half. But this is the county is basically saying they'll be putting some of their funds in. They're applying for state grants, and from a city standpoint, Mountain View said that they will be, helping put funds into renovations of that hotel in the long run. But yeah, the state will get the county will be going for state home key funds, and we'll see how that project progresses. Nothing is finalized yet. It was just direction from the county supervisors to continue down that road of purchasing. But definitely, I've gotten a lot of questions over the last month or so. This is always one of the things that what happens beyond your borders, cities don't really have a lot of control of. It's like when it comes down to it, we have full control, at least from a certain standpoint of what's being built within our city, and that kind of stops at any county-owned land, as well as any school district. So any school district's land, they follow what the state rules are, and the county follows county rules. So there are a few parcels that are owned by the county in our city, much like the Hamlin shelter. So that's county-owned land in our city. Ultimately, they can build what they want on that. Of course, it's always the city's working with the county to make sure that it's in everybody's best interest. The residents aren't up in arms, depending upon whose district that's in. So there's those sorts of things that always move forward. But to a large degree, this is beyond our borders, and we only have limited feedback from what that operation is, and it's not even final at this point. And then last Wednesday, Council had a joint virtual meeting with Valley Water. And so we have these meetings every year or two. We haven't had one, I think, for 3 years, and a lot of that had to do with COVID. But it's a way for us to collaborate and figure out where they stand on certain issues. We got several presentations from the Valley Water staff. One, of course, was the drought response, and Sunnyvale residents are doing really well as far as the drought response in reducing our water usage compared to 2019. But it was mainly what can we do more, and in Valley Water is doing a lot of programs for rainwater collection as far as funding drought resistant landscape, conversions of your lawns, and then it's also updating. We got an update on the Valley Water's purified water program. So this is mainly to refill the groundwater, and we have several locations within the county that are refill, and they're trying to use kind of treated water coming out of the San Jose, Palo Alto, maybe even Sunnyvale wastewater treatment plants to then do groundwater refill. And so there were lots, there was a possibility. I think we're third in the list as far as the groups, as far as being able to give them some of our water. But we a few years ago we extended the retreated water, so basically the recycled water from along Wolf Road, and so it goes all the way to the Apple campus at Homestead and Wolf, and conceivably extending it farther, along 280 all the way to Los Gatos, and those refill ponds, I think is a possibility. So we'll see how that goes. We also talked about the San Francisco Bay Shoreline project. So they're working with the Army Corps of Engineers and figuring out how to deal with sea level rise. So this is a whole Bay Area issue, of course, but Valley Water working mainly with the Army Corps for what we're going to do in Santa Clara County. And so, the first step is San Jose and Milpitas. The second phase is Palo Alto and Mountain View. The third phase is Santa Clara and Sunnyvale, and of course Moffett Field. And so it's trying to figure out how to best advocate at the federal level to make sure that we get those things going. And then, of course, we talked about the Sunnyvale East and West Channel Flood Protection Project, and that's several things. It's to improve the flood protection in Moffett Park. as you're coming off the bay, but it's also to just improve those channels overall, to make them more pedestrian and bike friendly, to make the riparian wilderness for the wildlife that much more amenable to for their activity. So it's just not a cement slough that goes through that area. And so it's working on those things. And Google has been a good partner. You know, they have a new construction that's breaking ground along Borregas, right across from the Smart Station. And one of the things that they're doing is looking to improve that west channel quite a bit, and how it connects up to the Bayland Trail. So that's part of it. And then from Sunnyvale City staff, we talked about Moffett Park specific plan that we have underway. And then we also, of course, have the Sunnyvale Clean Water Program, that our 20-year project to redo our wastewater treatment plant. Phase one will be completing sometime later this year, and then we're already starting to work on phase two. So it's a 20-year plan. It's the biggest project in Sunnyvale's history, and hopefully, this will continue to move forward. We got some really good funding last year, which actually reduced the cost of the project for us quite a bit. So that's actually been good and positive. Last Thursday, the Senate voted to extend the nation's debt limit through early December, and Democrats and Republicans finally reached a deal, and kind of a few weeks before or that final deadline, we're at least hold that off for a while. Of course, we still have the transportation bill, there's lots of, the reconciliation bill, that infrastructure bill is still going through. So they're making progress, and there's lots of wheeling and dealing right now, but things still aren't final, and we'll see how long it takes to get that completed. It's been quite a bit, there's been quite a long time that we've been talking about this. It's probably been, 4 or 5 months at this point. So we'll see how quickly they can get to a conclusion as far as that's concerned. And of course, they then need to deal with the debt ceiling again by early December. So there's lots of things coming up in October, November from a congressional standpoint and a federal standpoint. Last Thursday, health officials from the 8 Bay Area counties announced at least what the guidelines were for reducing and removing the indoor mask mandates that have been here. And so, they reached a consensus on what happens when our numbers are finally good enough to start reducing the mask requirements. And so it's still a while. It's when each jurisdiction reaches a moderate COVID-19 transmission rate, and we're still high. We're not extremely high, so it's good from that standpoint. But it's at least another month or two away before those restrictions are actually going away. But when we're in that moderate rate for 3 weeks, as well as hospitalizations are down, and populations are vaccinated, then the counties can make decisions on reducing those mask mandates. So ultimately, it'll be interesting to see how quickly we can get there. Our numbers are looking good from a county standpoint, and from kind of the Bay Area standpoint, we are in a little bit of a bubble as far as that's concerned. That being said, it is, you never know what the next variant might be, and so we'll see. As far as mask mandates go, of course, the state still has certain requirements as far as K through 12 schools, and then healthcare facilities, public transit, adult and senior care facilities. So even though this county might change those rules to deal with what people might do inside of stores, inside of restaurants and everything, there's still state guidelines that are in place to deal with transportation and healthcare facilities. So whatever we do from a county standpoint doesn't overrule what the state does. Last Saturday, We had our Sunnyvale State of the City and Community Awards events, and it was really great to see everyone in person. Thanks for those of you that were able to attend. We It was a little bit smaller. It was a smaller private event. We've been planning this for multiple months now, and not knowing where we'd be from COVID or where we'd be from weather, it was important to kind of keep it a little limited. So it was mainly, award winners, commissioners, a certain amount of community members, but keeping those numbers that were in attendance down to a little bit. But it was just great to honor our community award winners in person, and ultimately, there's been, I did a post earlier this week. The city did a post yesterday, but we had musical interludes, the Sunnyvale Singers, the Pampa Dance Company. We actually had lion dancers, and so it was kind of underscoring our diversity. And it wasn't just a whole bunch of speeches, which is, politicians give tons of speeches and awards and all that, but it was good to congratulate our award winners. So our distinguished resident was Murli Srinivasan. The business of the year was Sunnyvale School District, which has not had an easy year and a half with dealing with teaching children during COVID, but we've persevered, and they've succeeded as far as that's concerned. Contribution to the arts was Chitra Venkatarami. Educator of the year was Julio Delgado from Vargas, and then the second one, Riso Kamersky from Stockholmire. And then environmental achievement awards went to Dorit and Dave Chapman, and high school student of the year was Radhika Agarwal. So that was our community awards, and for the second year in a row, I got to choose two recipients for the mayor's awards. And you can mayors have in the past have done one or two, either a group or an individual or both. And so that it being a difficult year to say the least, I chose two yet again. This year I chose for a group award. I chose the Sunnyvale CERT volunteers, and they've really helped out, the Sunnyvale Department of Public Safety and the community over the last few years. It's not just, training people to be prepared for their next emergency, but we've activated them for dealing with crowd control or basically traffic control during the State of the City 2 years ago. They've done handed out blankets to the unhoused residents. They did all kinds of management during COVID of the vaccination and testing centers. They did wellness calls and COVID tracing calls. So they've been doing tons of things in our community during COVID, and so it was good to give them that award as far as that's concerned. Been a long time proponent for what the CERT team does and the SERV team does, and actually still take part in some of their final exercises as they're training each class. So I think the 58th class graduates later this month. So they have about 3 new classes every year that they continue to train people to be prepared for the next emergency. And we have over 600 people spread throughout Sunnyvale that have been trained. So it's good from that standpoint. And then for a Mayor's Award of Excellence for Individual Award, I honor Diane McKenna. And so she's been serving our community for many years. She was council member, she was mayor about 40 years ago. And she's also county supervisor. She's assisted nonprofits. She was instrumental in, working with Sunnyvale Community Services as they are working on their new home, so fundraising for that new home. But she also focused on environmental issues, transportation, social issues. So it was great to be able to honor her for all of her efforts for Sunnyvale and more. Earlier this week, and actually for the last 3 weeks, Governor Newsom has been signing and vetoing multiple bills. So the list is far too long to go through here. There's been some housing bills that he's passed that I haven't been completely in agreement with, but there's been a good bill that he signed last week. Was uh, the let's see. Oh, it was actually authored by Mark Berman. It was the long-term banning of small off-road engines, but these are mainly the ones that are used for landscaping and trying to make sure that there's zero emissions by 2024. So, you won't be able to buy a new gas-powered leaf blower, lawnmower, small chainsaw after 2024, and or maybe even before, depending on how quickly that transition goes. The big thing is, it's like an hour, and I've looked at studies, an hour of a leaf blower operation is equivalent to, I think, a thousand miles of a car drive, a car being driven. And so from that standpoint, we looked at it, and the good thing is, the legislation comes with, I think, 30 million in funding to help with that transition. But from a Sunnyvale standpoint, I'm happy that it finally moved forward. The city studied this about 8 years ago, and we decided against putting a ban of gas-powered leaf blowers in our city. Mainly at that point, the technology was not that good. The length of a electric powered leaf blower didn't last that long, and so it definitely technology has improved over the last 8 years. So yeah, that was before I got on council, but I've been working to continue with our assembly people, our senators, on trying to get something of that nature done. It's one thing for each city to do it, but really a lot of the kind of measures that need to get done need to be done statewide to really make a difference. So as opposed to each city kind of defining their own way of handling a specific issue. So happy to see that bill was signed, and there's a long list of bills if you want to go through them on things that were signed or vetoed. That I know that there are a lot of people that some of the transportation things were vetoed. The jaywalking bill was vetoed. The Idaho stop was vetoed. So anyway, from a biking standpoint, but ultimately, happy to see some of those that were actually passed through. On Tuesday, council met. We had several special orders of the day. So we declared October 17th through 23rd as Freedom from Workplace Bullying Week, and that's become, of course, a big issue over the last few years. We declared October as Cybersecurity Awareness Month, so definitely I encourage residents and businesses to learn how to keep yourselves and your computer systems safe from cyber attacks. We do a lot of work on the city standpoint to make sure that we're safe for our employees, for all of our operation, but it's important to raise that awareness everywhere. And then, of course, we declared October as Domestic Violence Awareness Month. And, this was launched, I think, initially in October of '87 to connect individuals and organizations working on domestic violence issues and just kind of raising general awareness. Sunnyvale received 213 related domestic violence calls this year alone through September 30th. That's almost a call a day. And when you look at it nationally, that's about 20,000 calls a day. So we had Matri, which is a domestic violence assistance organization, mainly focused on the Asian community. But they came and spoke, and so it's trying to just deal with domestic violence, emotional abuse, and they're part of the community. And if you need to get more information, I can put you in contact with them. And then as far as general business, we had two items. One, we considered the Sunnyvale Historical Society's proposed addition to the museum. And this has been a several year process. They about a year, just over a year ago, we said that the city wouldn't pay for the CEQA evaluation, so for the environmental impact evaluation for the adding an addition onto the museum, and that would take out, it looks like 5 to 10 trees, some of which, of course, would be planted elsewhere. There's constantly, trees being planted in the orchard. Apricot trees have a life of, a good production for about 20 years, but have a real life of maybe 30 to 40 years tops. And so we had directed about a year ago that if they want to move forward with that evaluation, that the historical society would pay for it. So they ended up paying for that. It came back that ultimately the trees aren't historic, so it's not loss of a real historic resource. The orchard is more a demonstration orchard. Yes, it does produce, but it's not like a large orchard where production is the main focus. But ultimately, it's saving the history as well as looking at other operations. So we actually have a study issue going on for the long-term operation of the orchard and how that's run, as well as other opportunities from a historical standpoint. Years ago, the Bianchi barn was moved there. So that's one of the things that the Historical Society did. Then, of course, building the museum and adding the Opie exhibit, the Orchard Heritage Interpretive exhibit that's next to that area, kind of highlighting the orchards and the growth that used to happen here in Sunnyvale and the Valley of Heart's Delight. But ultimately, council approved, basically accepted the CEQA document and kind of approved that process of going forward. So now it goes into actual design and figuring out what the kind of location is of that actual addition. But that addition is mainly to focus on kind of new library sort of stuff, but also the blue cube. So the museum has received quite a few things from the old blue cube that used to be in Moffett Park, and it's trying to preserve that history of Sunnyvale. And then the other thing was we approved the transfer of 5 properties from the general fund owned parcels to the Housing Mitigation Fund, and this was kind of just bookkeeping, but it's for the 6 properties at Matilda, Iowa, and Charles, and that's going to be a affordable housing project built on city land. And so we were working with the related developer as far as that's concerned, but we needed to move the property under the Housing Mitigation Fund. And so this is going to create 90 units for developmentally disabled, as well as low-income, qualified low-income people to live there and walkable to downtown. Great location, so it's actually good from that standpoint that that's there. And then finally, we closed the meeting in the memory of Bob Lawson. So Bob was a longtime resident here in Sunnyvale, small business owner, commissioner, activist. He was on Rotary for 35 years and its president. He served in Sunnyvale on multiple commissions. He was chair of the Planning Commission. He was on the chair of our Parks and Rec Commission. He was on our Art Commission and the Charter Review Committee. But in 2020, him and his wife Margaret actually received the Murphy Award for lifetime achievement by the Chamber of Commerce. And so it was good to remember Bob, and who passed away recently. And it's definitely a loss for Sunnyvale. He's always a happy smile whenever I met him, and always ready to talk about what happened from a planning standpoint, and how for me, being on the Planning Commission for 9 years, talking about how we got to where we are today. So but sorry to miss him, and it was good to close the meeting in his memory. And then on Wednesday of this week, I got a tour of the new City Hall. So we did about 2.5 months ago, we finished the framing, the metal framing, but there was a lot of work that had to happen interior, as far as pouring certain cement floors and doing all kinds of kind of infrastructure work, getting ready to close that up. So it was good to actually take a look around, be up on, once you go up about 4 floors, you see quite a bit of the valley. So it was good from that standpoint. But Happy to see that that project is moving forward quickly. Let's go ahead and get to the COVID numbers. COVID cases are stabilizing a little bit from a national standpoint. We have now 44.6 million cases. That's another 700,000 cases in the last week, but that's the same as the week before. So it's stabilized a little bit nationally. We've had almost 218 million vaccinated with at least one dose. So that's 78%, almost 79% of adults with a one dose, and 68% of adults are fully vaccinated. We still have people passing away from COVID. We've had another 11,000 deaths, so we're now at 718,000 deaths. And then from a California standpoint, we've had 4.5 million positive cases. That's about now 4,900 cases a day. That's down from 5,500 cases a day last week. So it's slowly trending down as more people get vaccinated, and I think and some of the strains are less virulent. So that's been positive. We've had over 70,000 fatalities here in California, and just another 700 deaths in the last week. But on a positive note, we've had 51 million vaccines administered, and we're still at number 10 on states with residents with at least one dose at 73%. Still at number 15 with residents that are fully vaccinated at 60%. So things are looking relatively good as far as that's concerned. And then from a county standpoint, things continue to trend downward as far as new cases are concerned. So that's actually positive. We've had in general we've now reached 144 about 1,000 cases. That's up another 900 this week. It's about the same as last week. So we're slowly trending downwards from the thousands that we had a few weeks ago, or 1,500 a few weeks ago. We've had 1,821 deaths in the county. That's an additional 14 in the last week. But from a vaccination standpoint, we're looking fantastic. 89.2% of the county aged 12 and older, not just adults, have at least one dose, and 84.5% of those 12 and older are fully vaccinated. So it's really good from that standpoint. And I continue to do a lot of advocating for our city, at the county level, working with the county supervisors and county health as far as testing. So county COVID testing is back in Sunnyvale, and so the county will be opening a COVID testing site in Sunnyvale at our community center on the first and third Thursdays of the month. So it'll be from 9:30 a.m. to 4 p.m. every Thursday going forward. Sorry, every first and third Thursday going forward. And so the first one will be October 21st, next Thursday. So appointments will be open, scheduling 7 days before that testing date. And then once all the appointments are filled, that location will no longer appear for scheduling. So if you want to get tested and regularly get tested, start signing up that Thursday before, and then get your test. And if you to do that, or find any other place within the county that you might want to get tested, go to sccfreetest.org. And then as far as getting vaccinated, the county has lots of drop-in clinics for getting your vaccine, and you can go to sccfreevax.org. The county will have a pop-up at El Dorado Mobile Home Community on Saturday, October 23rd. So that's a week from tomorrow. So if you want to get vaccinated, you can go to El Dorado and see that. Next, let me give you some updates on some local events, and if you have any questions, put them into the comments. But tomorrow is Charles Street Gardens fall plant sale. So if you haven't been to Charles Street Gardens, definitely it's worth a visit. It's right there on Charles, near the library, near the museum, right along Charles Avenue off of Olive. And ultimately, they have their summer plant sales and fall plant sales that help kind of fund their operation there at Sunnyvale's First Community Gardens. I was, a founding member, almost 20 years ago now. 15 years ago, I think, is when, or so, is when they first started. And then as far as other things, next Friday, our new REI Sunnyvale store will open, so a week from today, at 9 a.m. And I'm actually getting a little tour of the facility later today. They're not fully stocked and they're still, ramping up, but from what I've seen from the outside, it's looking really good. And their grand opening celebration will start in 2 weeks, and so that'll be like Friday through Sunday, October 29th through the 31st. There'll be giveaways, vendors, music, all that. So a big celebration. So definitely plan to attend. October 30th, there's a Diwali event at the Sunnyvale Community Center from 11 a.m. to 3 p.m. And of course, Diwali is the festival of lights. It's the triumph of good over evil and light over darkness. But it's actually good to actually have that celebration here in Sunnyvale. We had a smaller celebration a few years ago, and this is a group of residents getting together to try to make this into an annual event. And I'm keeping my fingers crossed as far as that's concerned. And then, of course, there's actually, if you want to, I went to a Diwali event last weekend in Fremont, but there's actually one tomorrow in Cupertino at Memorial Park right along Stelling from 11 a.m. to 6 p.m. So if you come out, you'll see me there, I think around 2 or 3 p.m. But definitely come out and enjoy if you want. And then Sunday, October 31st, is our Halloween Pet Parade. So it's back in person this year, so that'll be going from Redwood Square to ultimately Plaza del Sol, so along Murphy Avenue. And as far as that same day, so that happens in the morning, I think starting around 10. And then that afternoon at the Quarter Note, so that's the nightclub Central in Lawrence. They actually have a canine search and rescue fundraiser. So I've been there multiple times over the last few years. But it supports canine search and rescue. There's a barbecue, there's an auction, live music, car show. So definitely attend that if you get a chance. And then later in November, the ice skating rink will return to Sunnyvale. That'll be happening in the Murphy parking lot from November 19th. Sorry, Murphy. The Macy's parking lot right along Murphy and Washington from November 19th to January 2nd. And so a lot of people are looking forward to that. And then as far as upcoming council meetings, our next council meeting is October 26th. It'll start with kind of public safety awards. And as far as the main meeting, probably the biggest thing is a study issue that's coming back on building a pipeline for students for careers in public service. So trying to make sure that our local community colleges have programs to say, the city is a viable location to work and not just go to high-tech companies. And then another council meeting is upcoming is the first one in November is November 9th, and we'll finally get a study session feedback on our golf subsidy study issue. And this is and the main meeting will also have the final park design for the Redwood Place. The previous AMD site has a 6.5 acre park, and so it's the approval of that final design. So good to see another park moving forward within Sunnyvale. Let's go ahead and get to our weekly questions. Heather asked, why are we building an extension to the public safety building if in the future phase it's going to be torn down and turned into a wildflower garden? Seems like a waste of money and resources. It would probably be better that open space will never happen before those buildings are torn down. To make space for it, the city will find a new use for those buildings. So definitely phase two. So phase one right now was defined as a new city hall and an addition onto the old public safety building. And that was, the old that was being added mainly for several things because they were running out of space. But from an emergency operations center, the old building didn't meet all the seismic requirements that are really there. So that new building will house the emergency operations center. There's a certain amount of renovations that will happen in that old building. But so phase one was the new city hall, which is currently under works, and then that addition. In the grand scheme of things, phase two was going to be a new library and a new DPS building. That new DPS building was supposed to be along Charles, and council had some kind of reservations as far as that's concerned. They didn't want to rush that project because one of the things that we're trying to do is get control of the county court, the county courthouse site along El Camino. So that's county-owned land. And ultimately, because it's part of that kind of civic center area, it really makes sense that public safety building would be where the county courthouse is and that parking lot that's next to it. And then the emergency operations center, which is it's an addition, but it's really a standalone building, might be maintained. So we'll see how that would fit in the grand scheme of everything. But it's a long-term effort trying to get control of the county courthouse site. And so hopefully, and that building is mainly used to warehouse records and it hasn't been used for years now. And so if we can be able to get control of that site, then from the bigger picture standpoint, public safety could go there along El Camino, which makes a lot more sense logistically on where it sits in the city. So hopefully that's in. So yeah, definitely there's long-term questions, and then phase two doesn't have any time frame. So with the additions that were there, public safety basically said they don't need new with the addition as well as the renovations that are being done onto the existing building. They don't need a new public safety building for another probably 15 years. So conceivably that addition, if we can get control of the courthouse in the meantime, it makes it a lot easier to add to where it really should be added, and then maintain more open space across, next to the library, across from City Hall. Phase two. That being said, the new library was in phase two, and we are pushing forward to look at a bond to say, okay, let's see what we can do as far as carving out, adding the new library sometime in the next few years. So that's the other project that we're looking at, and whether or not it makes sense to add a bond measure to an upcoming 2022, 2024. Actually, I think we've already decided against 2022, but something will come back to us, I think, next year to say whether or not we want to look at doing that in 2024. Brian asked, how much of our tax dollars went into this? Was the city hall this big really needed? So as far as the funding came from a lot of different sources. There are multiple funds that we set aside for long-term, in a long-term standpoint. The city is, from a budgetary standpoint, has a 10-year balanced budget and a 20-year plan. And so we look at long-term infrastructure. So there was an infrastructure fund, there was a facilities fund. Part of the funding for this came from land sale. So it's selling, a property that we had on Kiefer or Kez that we didn't need anymore. So there's certain land that we ended up selling, as well as, because we're adding 6 acres of open space. There's park dedication fees, there's enterprise funds. So Nova will have a new home at that location, and so they will that funding, that long-term funding from them will also help from that building. And so the size of the building was needed because it merges a lot of different other buildings into one building. And so it's the old city hall, which was, aging to say the least, but it's 60 years old, but it's been having lots of electrical issues. It has heating issues, but beyond that, there's the annex. So that's where people pay their utility payments. The rabbit hutches, quote unquote rabbit hutches, where Nova and a lot of small businesses are across the street next to the library. Those roofs are constantly leaking. It's hard to maintain heat and all that. And then there's also those portable buildings that are south of the current city hall. that people that our staff has been working in. And so it merges all that space into one building, which I think gives us a lot more, you know, the existing facilities, we kept adding on portables in order to deal with increased staff and issues. We had people doubling up in cubicles and all that. So you know, all that kind of fed into the needs assessment on how much space we need, and moving all those separate buildings into a single building that's LEED Platinum, that's net zero, you know, from an energy standpoint, I think was a viable solution. It creates a plaza, and it creates a lot more open space as opposed to all these buildings spread out throughout that area. David asked what is happening with the parking lots downtown. So EVgo, so the city partnered with EVgo to add new charging stations in the city to help our, you know, our infrastructure network for EVs. And so the parking lot at Sunnyvale and Evelyn, as well as the parking lot at Francis and Evelyn, are going to be, there's going to be certain number of spots taken out temporarily while construction's there, and then they're replaced with spots, parking spots with EV chargers in them. And then there's also going to be a similar effort happening at the community center. So we're trying to, you know, get EV infrastructure a lot more available to anyone who needs it in the city. Let's see if there's any other questions. Don't see anything offhand. So let's go ahead and, you know, wrap up. Thanks for joining me again this week. I'm really proud of our city, especially, you know, over the last year and a half. But been, you know, I've been active in our city. Well, I've been on council for 5 years and active in our city for almost 20 years now. And so always happy to see, you know, how residents, especially in the last year and a half, have helped each other. You know, they've donated food and clothes. They just pulled together in all kinds of ways. So, you know, it's the future's still uncertain. We're not through this emergency, this disaster that has hit us over the last year and a half yet. And new issues come up almost every day. But your actions make a difference and have really made a difference. Sunnyvale will emerge from this as a stronger community. We're in this together, and we will get through this together. Thanks for listening. Take care, and have a great week. See you. Take care. Bye.